see the beach erosion, the drop-off happening right here.
This is about as close as this storm is going to get to the U.S. coastline.
A reminder on how you can escape those deadly rip currents.
Swim parallel to the shore.
We'll join researchers below the ocean surface as they look to protect endangered coral.
Those animals depend on a healthy coral reef in order for their livelihoods.
And you aren't imagining it, there's actually a smell when it rains.
From our nation's capital, this is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm Angela Brown. Hurricane Erin remains a Category 2 storm this morning, and even as it starts to move away from the East Coast, the risk of life-threatening rip currents will continue for several more days. Erin's peak winds are 105 miles per hour, but that's not the story. It's the massive waves like that crashing into beach communities. A state of emergency was declared in North Carolina with parts of the Outer Banks under evacuation orders. And it's a good thing because water pushed past the beaches and into the streets, closing part of Highway 12, the main roads through the barrier islands. Now the area remains under a tropical storm warning. Swimming is banned on most beaches because it's just too dangerous. Of course, that didn't stop some surfers from getting into the water. We'll have the latest on Erin's path in a moment, but we want to start with a look at conditions on the coast this morning. You have Michael Yoshida is on Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina.
Erin, way offshore. We still have some pretty big surf here in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina. You can see the waves behind me, and you also, as we've been seeing over the last few days, see surfers, others, some paddleboarders still out there. Obviously, not what local officials want to be seen. We've talked about this for days now, the danger of those powerful rip currents that have been made more intense, we're told by local officials, by those effects from Erin. These rip currents at some points a block, 2 blocks wide, so they're not taking 1, 2 swimmers, they're taking 6, 7, 8. So if you walk along the beach here in Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, you can see just right here in front of me some of the impacts of these waters. You can see the beach erosion, the drop-off happening right here. And talking with those who live here, they say, thankfully over the last few years, they've had some of those beach renourishment projects where the Army Corps of Engineers comes in, they push up some sand to really build back up the beaches. But again, you can see a big change just from yesterday to today.
Here's a look at conditions this morning in Wildwood, New Jersey. Beaches there are also closed to swimming. For the latest on Erin's current path and position, we turn to Baltimore meteorologist Justin Chambers.
This storm right now about 200 miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras, North Carolina. This is about as close as this storm is going to get to the U.S. coastline as it continues its northeasterly track going through the next couple of hours. It's still a Category 2 storm. This was a major hurricane earlier this week, but it is now down to a Category 2 with 105-mile-an-hour sustained winds. And you can see we still have the tropical storm warning. That is for the coastal water, so it's not on land, but that's from Fenwick all the way down to Chincoteague and all the way up and down the East Coast, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, all of those areas impacted here with the winds that are going to be strong in tropical storm force, but again in the water. Here's a look at the current track and the official track from the National Hurricane Center. And you can see that storm making that kind of right turn later this afternoon, heading out to sea, continuing to stay out to sea and well up into the North Atlantic as we get into the next couple of days where it will become post-tropical. So not expected to strengthen anymore. However, as we've been talking about, the rip current risk and the high surf advisory for those 6 to 12-foot waves looks impressive. You can get to the beach, you just can't get in the water.
Erin made for a rough ride on ferries between Rhode Island and Block Island. The boats rocked back and forth in high seas. Officials eventually canceled yesterday's late afternoon ferries, as well as those scheduled for today and tomorrow. 8 to 11-foot waves are expected this afternoon in Block Island Sound, which is just south of the mainland. They could grow to up to 13 feet tomorrow. Meteorologist A.J. Mastrangelo is on Rhode Island this morning for more on the current situation.
Hurricane Erin still very far away. I actually had you measure it for me. 480 miles away right now we are from the Hurricane Center. We're down here in Point Judith at the southern tip of Narragansett, and you can see some of the impressive swells already behind me. Some of these waves already crashing this morning and been encroaching parts of the parking lot here. We have seen a little bit of a crowd start to develop, and some of those offshore wave heights have already been around 11 feet. So very impressive swells out here. We had some surfers that came to stop by. They said they were going to be going out. However, they actually decided not to. And that just goes to show that even if you are a very good swimmer, this is very, very dangerous stuff. We did not see a swell event like this last year. The high rip current risk will be continuing not just today and tomorrow, potentially into the weekend, of course, with all those folks heading to the beaches. We got to know the danger there. So do expect to see swimming be closed these next couple of days.
Now to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. As you can see, people are on the beach this morning, and as the camera pans out to sea, the waves don't look nearly as big as they do up north. Officials here took every precaution. As Erin moves along the coast, Gianna Forbes has more.
Well, I'm glad to miss this one, but it's peak hurricane season, so you know the September, October time frame is always kind of a day by day for us.
Saying hello to peak hurricane season, even if it's not saying hello back. Hurricane Erin may not directly be hitting the Grand Strand beaches, but its size and strength are still causing rip current advisories and high surf warnings.
Basically, we're just kind of monitoring the conditions.
Places like North Myrtle Beach and Cherry Grove Inlet are already being vulnerable to minor coastal flooding. So with a major hurricane just off the coast, it's something Chief Floyd and Ocean Rescue are keeping an eye on.
We discussed with our lifeguards the conditions that we expect. Our tide is dropping right now. However, once the tide starts coming back in, we'll probably see a few more of those bigger sets.
I asked North Myrtle Beach Patrol Officer May Wingard if they've seen any rescues, and although she says she has, it's important to note talking to a lifeguard may save your life.
We've had a few over the last few days. We really pride ourselves in being proactive here in North Myrtle Beach. So anytime we see a swimmer that seems to be having a harder time, we'll go ahead and call them in.
Hurricane Erin created dangerous rip current conditions up and down the East Coast all week. To help understand how rip currents form and what you should do if you find yourself in one, let's turn to meteorologist Alan Strum.
Tropical weather makers and hurricanes like Erin can pose a big threat along coastal communities, even when far offshore. Rip currents, one of the #1 killers across some Gulf Coast beaches. These are caused when water rushes over the sandbars and then uses a deeper channel to move out. That's where the rip current is. And swimming against this is like being on a treadmill. Best way to get out of a rip current is swim parallel to the shore. Lifeguards say if you see someone in trouble, dial 911 and tell them where the danger is, and do what lifeguards do. If you ever make a surf rescue yourself, always take a flotation device with you.
And we also invite you to check out our preview of the hurricane season. Superstorms, the 2025 hurricane season is streaming on our YouTube page. We examine the impacts of Helene last year and look back at Katrina 20 years after it devastated New Orleans. And moving inland now to Arkansas, where a restaurant in Hot Springs hopes to reopen soon. High winds from a thunderstorm left significant damage. Tyree White has details.
Owner of Cajun Boilers, Noah Gauster, saw on the restaurant's security cameras as powerful winds blew through Hot Springs.
I saw that sign hit my car. I was like, okay, wait, I should probably get out of the office and make sure nothing else is going wrong. As I was pulling out to go check on my house and my wife, I noticed that the roof was missing off of the other building on our property. And then I was sure some tornado hit that I had no idea about.
But it wasn't a tornado. A preliminary local storm report from the National Weather Service of Little Rock shows it was actually thunderstorm winds, even reaching the Oaklawn area where some trees fell on homes.
It was breathtaking to see all of that.
The winds ripped off the roof of the Cajun Boilers storage building and blew it on top of the restaurant. Gauster's wife, Taylor Gauster, says the storage roof damaged the restaurant roof and ceiling. Now they're having to clean up water leaks and get the roof repaired, since the damage left a portion of the ceiling bent in.
It looked, I would say, worse than what it turned out to be, what we were left with, but it was shocking to see everything.
And coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll head to Utah and find out why officials are warning that recent wildfires are increasing the risk for flash flooding. And we'll take you diving off the coast of Florida to find out what researchers are doing to protect the state's coral reefs.
I'm meteorologist Ryan Munn. Let's get a look at the Northeast. We head through the day on Thursday. We are talking lots of sunshine, some clouds in southern New England for the afternoon. And here is some of the rain associated with Erin as it passes well down to our south and east. However, we are going to see high surf, heightened waves, heightened risk for rip currents as we head through Thursday, Friday, Saturday as well. And we are going to stay dry, however, with temperatures generally running in the 60s and 70s throughout much of the Northeast.
I'm Chief Meteorologist Gerard Jabali. Here's a look at the Mid-Atlantic region. Hurricane Erin's going to be skirting by the East Coast, bringing some impacts to the immediate coastline, mainly in the form of some high surf and rip currents. But some gustier winds along the coastline will be possible. Otherwise, it's going to be cloudy and breezy as we move through your Thursday. But we will see that system exit. High pressure settling in on Friday, and temperatures able to warm up. We'll be in the 70s for Thursday afternoon, but 80s by Friday.
I'm meteorologist Charlotte Carl. High pressure continues to keep Florida above average in the middle 90s, whereas the rest of us around where we should be this time of year, lower 90s and middle 80s in the Carolinas, thanks to all that cloud cover as a result of Erin passing just to the east of the coastline of the Carolinas, heading up towards the Virginia coastline. Still expecting some outer band impacts in terms of wind gusts and also a few isolated showers. In addition, that storm surge will subside with afternoon showers everywhere else.
Weather Window, presented by the National Weather Desk.
Seems this large California bear had a taste for the treat inside this hummingbird feeder and stood 7 feet tall to get it. And what a sight at Juno Beach Pier Wednesday, a double rainbow. The fainter secondary rainbow happens when the sun reflects twice in the same raindrop and the color order is reversed.
For more content like this, follow the National Weather Desk on TikTok.
Well, 2 months after a large wildfire tore through southwest Utah, destroying 12 homes and scorching more than 15,000 acres, the community is bracing for what comes next. With monsoon season approaching, officials say the burn scar makes the area more vulnerable to flash flooding. Liv Kelleher looks at how small communities deal with these threats.
I know it's extremely difficult as a small town to not have your own resources, not having to pay, everything's volunteer. You are getting secondhand supplies.
To bridge the gap, Hannah Beck started a fundraiser with proceeds going directly to the fire department. The Pine Valley Fire Department is made up of about 24 volunteers. As an unincorporated town, they receive minimal financial support from the county, relying on community assessments and donations.
We're all self-funded. So we buy the best things we can buy with the money we have.
Now, the threat of flooding has added a new level of urgency.
The soil up there, now it's been burned, becomes what they call hydrophobic. The water is shed off the ground. It just runs off.
Some federal crews are still assisting, but Hardy says the full impact of the fires will be felt for years.
Never lost a home in Pine Valley to a wildfire before, and this year we lost 13. So this is unprecedented, this is historical. So to ask, do we have enough resources, do we have enough funds? I don't know.
Pine Valley is overlooked whenever it comes to a fire department, and as far as just basic needs. People come up here, they see the glory in it, the beauty in it, and just assume that everything's good and taken care of, but it's exactly the opposite.
And 6 months ago, deadly flooding hit parts of West Virginia's southern coal fields. Efforts continue to rebuild what was lost. They're also hoping to prevent anything similar from happening again. Anna Sanders takes us to some of those areas.
Alan Schaus had just become the pastor again at East Williamson Baptist Church in Mingo County when February rains brought 4 feet of water into the lower level of the church.
It was just shocking to me, really, to come down and see everything floating and seeing everything covered up and destroyed.
Now he's got 2 of the flooded offices almost complete, but the main part of the first floor still under construction and likely will be for a while. A place that in February was dealing with its own flooding, but was first a hub helping the surrounding community, and homes also impacted.
Because most of them, this is not their first time, you know, and so it's almost like a routine.
A routine that Welch Mayor Harold McBride unfortunately knows well. He can remember back to Welch's flood in 1977 and more recently in 2021 and 2022. And then this past one in February, where 3 people lost their lives. He says the city and the community do what they can to help in the aftermath, but now they're at a point where the city needs reinforcements.
All we do here is we clean the mud out and we wait for the next round. Instead of doing some things to help prevent a lot of tragedy in the next round, and it will happen again. It's where we live. We live in between these mountains. It's going to happen.
McBride says state and federal investments are needed in stream restoration, small-scale flood walls, and a bridge that can still allow cars and ambulances to get to the hospital when the underpass floods. Though daunting, he says these measures would save money in the long run.
And coral reefs in Florida are facing unprecedented threats from disease to widespread bleaching driven by increasing ocean temperatures. Scientists are warning that without urgent intervention, up to 90% of coral reefs worldwide could be lost within our lifetime. Danny Travis joined a team of researchers as they work to find a long-term solution to saving coral reefs along the Florida coast.
At a dive site just 3 miles off the coast of Palm Beach, this team of researchers are saving wildlife in wild places.
The site that we're going to, we've dove the last few years, and so it's going to be a really great opportunity for us to see what's going on, what's changed since last year.
Data from last year's coral research season showed positive change in the 41 sites surveyed in Palm Beach and Martin counties. This is out of 613 total sites surveyed along Florida's coral reef tract last season.
And there was some really good information that came out of it. One was that the corals overall were much healthier than the previous year, and we saw a lot less disease. And we saw a number of species that have been very susceptible to disease in the past, and right now they look excellent.
A big factor was deeper and cooler ocean waters in our counties. But the same good news does not go for the data collected at some 560 other reefs south of us.
Yeah, the southern reefs, because the water's a lot shallower, the corals get a lot more stressed. And so in past years, we've seen a lot more disease and a lot more corals that simply didn't make it through the season.
Hopes were high as we geared up for the first dive of this year's season. Ready to make a splash in the fight for coral conservation. Researchers documented different species of coral. They did this by laying out yellow lines where they were surveying underwater. From there, they measured the coral, conducted health assessments, and noted how water temperature affected these corals over the year. The dive team, myself included, also taking note of vast marine life all around the reef.
That was absolutely incredible. So we were down there for about 45 minutes at 60 feet, and the coral was so vibrant. We saw fish of every color. We saw multiple nurse sharks, multiple moray eels, and a giant stingray. It was mind-blowing. And why I thought that was cool, we'll let the data speak for itself.
Those animals depend on a healthy coral reef, in order for their livelihood. So seeing them tells us that the whole reef ecosystem is doing great.
So how did data from this first dive compare to last year? I had a researcher explain the data noted in their charts.
We identified a lot of corals, but there's not a lot over here, which means that the corals overall were very healthy.
This is the bad side. What does the one singular thing mean?
It just stands for overgrowth and interaction. So what that means is that there was another animal that was on the bottom. In this case, it was a sponge that was rubbing up against the coral and caused a little bit of problems with the coral. And so we just note that, but otherwise the animal overall was very healthy.
A healthy reef ecosystem doesn't just affect the inhabitants underwater.
A lot of people, unless they're scuba divers, unless they're going out and seeing it with their own eyes, it's a little out of sight, out of mind. But every other breath we take comes from healthy coral reef ecosystems. So we depend on them whether or not we know that they're there.
And time now for a short break, but first we soar over Michigan's Sandy Point Orchard.
Well, a very good Thursday morning, everyone. I'm meteorologist Andrew Buck-Michael. Look at the heat we've got out here across the west, getting up to 100 there in South Dakota today, but much cooler across the Great Lakes, with high temperatures only getting into the 70s for the day today. We've got a few scattered showers and storms trying to start to drift their way down from the north as we head into Friday, and just a couple of spotty pockets of rain Saturday.
Well, a good Thursday morning to you. I'm meteorologist Chris Suchan. Look at our forecast today across the region, and we will see another round of some scattered showers and storms along the Gulf Coast and working into central portions of Texas. Look at those highs, too. 80s and 90s in August. That's not bad. Further north, we'll see drier weather, 80s and 90s. Friday's forecast, pretty dry across Oklahoma City and Little Rock. There's a chance for a few showers and storms toward the Gulf Coast.
Well, hi there and a good Thursday morning to everybody. I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell. Out west, we're starting to heat back up again. You can see the Rose City of Portland, Oregon, back up to 90. 70s as the fog clears from the Golden Gate in San Francisco, and a toasty 113 per usual today in Phoenix. Most of the west pretty quiet. You see a few thunder boomers today around Yellowstone and warming north winds along the west coast through Seattle and Vancouver. And that's the scene from here.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, have you ever felt like there's a distinct smell in the air when it rains? Well, you're not wrong. Meteorologist Violet Skybor explains.
First, soil-dwelling bacteria, which secrete geosmin, which is produced from its spores. And raindrops help to release this earthly-smelling chemical into the air. On top of that, plants also secrete oils during dry periods. And then when it rains, it causes those compounds to be released from the oils. And that's what we smell called petrichor. A third reason happens when we have thunderstorms. Lightning can actually split oxygen molecules in half. And those atoms start to reattach to new oxygen molecules, creating what's called ozone. And that creates a very sharp chlorine-like scent in the air before it starts to rain. So that is a pre-rain odor. And humans are 200,000 times more sensitive to petrichor, or the smell of rain, than sharks are to blood. Now, the reason for this very keen sense that we have is a survival mechanism.
Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Angela Brown. Make it a great day, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow.